have to make compromises and modifications of approaches while making decisions of the policies. Decision makers should make a rational, informed choice. They need to consider the elements of entering the process, implications of implementation, and feasibility of the policy. The decision is never product of a single person. Decisions should be taken collectively in order to arrive at all the best alternatives. Having a collective decision allows a better assessment of the pros and cons of the decision, and also maximum feasibility can be attained. Having many brains giving their inputs will become policy decision more inclusive of the diversity and more acceptable by the populace. While taking a decision, the decision wouldn't be just one issue, but a number of issues. This way, the time consuming and lengthy process of decision making can be made easier. Also, to have a substantial decision, it is better to take a number of issues. Irrationally is unavoidable, be it democratic or non democratic. Somewhere there is a chance to have some kind of a bias or need to be irrational. If a certain sections of the society need some allowance, despite it being irrational, for peace of all, the decision will be taken in favor of need for a section. It may appear that a dichotomization between rationality and irrationality is irrelevant, but this needs to be addressed. Not always a rational decision would satisfy the society. If maximum benefit and utility were the only criteria while making a decision, it would have been difficult to have a welfare state if rationality is given to top priority. It may jeopardize the prospect of the welfare principle, isn't it? The Sidner's theory of decision making, if you could read, central idea of a Sindel is the central idea of the decision making according to the Sidner is, that the post Second World War period witnessed a revolution in the thought system of political science. We have already touched on behavioralism and structural behavioralism communication theory. Now we all focus our attention on Sinder's approach to study of political science, which is commonly known as decision-making theory or approach to study of politics. I think I have said it that it is something the compromise between and the people and the state in the process of decision making. So, as if you could see, Cinder, what he is trying to tell it as that the meaning of decision theory is we know that the general system theory of David Easton and structural functional approach of Gabriel Allman and other related theories are more or less static, which means that all theories deal with those elements that are static. But Cinder's point of view is a society is not only complex but dynamic. If so, the real approach to study of politics would be conceptualize the analysis so that it can hope for dynamic aspects of the society or the changes that are taking place very frequently. Cinder therefore claims that is a decision-making approach is dynamic. While the decision makers make decision, they consider all the situation. If they fail to do, these decisions will not achieve acceptability and credibility. As in the Cinder's view, the second, if you could see, it has been observed by the Cinder that the decision-making process has been playing a very crucial part in administration of any of business organization or governmental department. Really, if you see that the promises of the government, what it has to make for the people, how they can accomplish all of them in the sense means by the making of a policy itself. Could you imagine the state without and making a policy? It is impossible to imagine the state existence in the modern days because the government is taking a lot of risk and lot of strenuous process to accomplishments of this welfare state concept. Whenever the welfare state concept is there, definitely there is a need to making of a policies. And where in the making policies, there has to have a certain decision making, which actually compromise, which make the needs of the people to be and done among them. So as and Sia Bernard deals with the decision-making concept as it is a pivotal concept of the government and any of the organization. Simon's model of man and Bernard's the function of executive were published in the year of 1957 and 1958 respectively that talk about an decision making. It is in a very important way. As according to Cinder, draws our attention to important points. One is decision making plays so important a role in any business organization and government department that it cannot be neglected at all. Secondly, if so, a comprehensive theory based on empiricism and scientific methods to be built up, it is interesting to note that Sindar, Simon, and Bernards are contemporary. Sinders says that it is essential to go through the process of decision making, what factors are involved in the process, to analysis decision, their impact and upon the society. If we treat the subject in this way, we shall find that the concept has dynamized the political system and process of analyzing political phenomena as a part of decision making theory. We know that in the liberal democratic system, various groups, political parties, and non-governmental organizations play important role in the administration. Even then, decision-making process includes all of them and into the orbit of analysis. Why decision-making is an important? According to this Richard Sindel, has maintained that in every society there is a political action, and beyond every action there is a role of human activity. Again, human action relates to policy decision, how the society is to be managed, our governmental department is to be administered. All is related to the decision taken by human beings. That is, the policy or a decision is a dynamic force of action. Therefore, in order to study the society, a management of department, and it is necessary to analyze all the aspects of the policy making. Analysis of the policy making process also help us to acquire a comprehensive knowledge about the dynamic of society. Knowledge about dynamics of society is required for the formulations of the future policy. Society is always changing. Naturally, today's policy may be irrelevant for future. So it is a very important for the formulation of the policy for future generation. If we stop our activity, society or its advancement will come to an halt. Similarly, if you see the importance of this, and we can understand very easily that in a factors influencing decision making, if you say decision making differs from society to society, state to state. A decision suitable for developed, industrialized, and highly educated society may not be equally suitable for a very backward agriculture society or tribal area. For this situation, the decision or the decision making process is it not all responsible? A decision is made not for the decision itself, but for the inhabitants of the society. Naturally, the crux of the issue is how to be aware of the situation and material environment suitable for decision making, and the chief exponent of the concept was aware of it. Cinder has said that there are mainly three factors which is one way or other influence the decision making process. New tendency. Before the end of the 1950s, an elaborate idea about decision making theory was built by many, and among them, the most prominent figures were Richard Sidner, Chester Bernard, Herbert Simon. The last two scholars developed the theory mainly for public administration. Richard Sidner was interested in democratic and international politics, and he applied his model in the two segments of political science. But there is an overlapping of the decision-making process so far as public administration and the political science are concerned. Some of the concepts of decision-making mean for the public administration have also their strong bearing in political science. However, the central idea formulated and developed in the 50s continued to spread to wings and influence even in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. Following this remark of well-known author, indeed, during the 1960s and 70s, a distinctive area of study, policy analysis, was developed. They set out to examine how the policy was initiated, formulated, and implemented, how the policy process could be improved. We call it new tendency because interest in decision making had already emerged in the mid 50s, but in the 60s and 70s, separate area for the study of decision making were selected, and scholars developed more time and intellect for the proliferation of the concept. Several factors contributed to the emergence of decision making theory, and the most important of them is the strong urge to verify the concept with the help of the data and scientific principle. Kinds of the theories. Decisions are quite common at all of form political system, such as authoritarian structure, democratic setup, totalitarian regimes, the management of the government department, the administration of the private organization, and even a philanthropic association requires a decision and not one decision, but a bundle of decisions. For the making of a decision is not all. The implementation, revision, and other aspects are also equally important. Considering all the some have divided the decision making process into several models, and this may stated following ways. Models of decision making process. The first one, rational actor model. This model solely believes in a rational methods of decision making, means in a scientific way. This is based on economic theory and utilitarianism. It is believed that an economic man works rationally, looks at the maximum utility while making a decision. This model can be said to be the best form of a business organization that seeks maximum benefit. Belief system model. In the belief system model, the decisions are taken within the decision makers of the state's ideological deep rooted beliefs. For example, a communist country cannot make a decision that is against the welfare of citizens, no matter how rational decision. It is made by keeping the deep values incorporated with the decision makers. Stages of decision making. There are four stages of decision making, namely policy. The first one, policy initiation. Second one, formulation of decision. Third one, implementation of the policy. And the fourth one is, but it's the last one, it's not a least one, it's a very important in the decision making. It is an evaluation. It is a evaluation. The process of the policy making is initiated all the background of existing problem. The process should commence at right time and the right details in hand. This is to ensure that the problem is addressed timely and properly. The time lag between the emergence of problems and the taking of decisions is inevitable, but can be reduced considerably by speedy response. In the third unit, the decision stages of decision making. The second one, it was the process of formulation of the decision, and rather the tough part having involved various persons and detailing that of requires. This is the most important stage of decision making, as the more accurate the solutions to problem is, the earliest would the problem be solved. Implementation of the policy is also a vital stage. It's not only enough to make a decision, but this decision has to reach the subjects. That is, when it is successful, in order to have a successful policy or decision, it is most important to implement the needful as prescribed the policy. The process of implementation should also be checked in the time bound manner. Evaluation is simply the result of the decision or policy. It tells how successful the policy or decision is and pros and cons. This would be helpful to review and revise the problem in meaningful manner. It's also necessary to evaluate because of the complex and dynamic. What is needed today might not be requirement for tomorrow.
Hence, it is important to evaluate the decision. However, all these things is an important in terms of a decision making process. Next theory as a and in the policy making is that it is a elite theory, group theory. Let me tell you the meaning of a elite theory. What does it mean? A public policy can be considered as the preference of values of governing elite, that is, the values cherished by the elite sections of the society. It is often asserted that of a cases, whether it's a developed country like USA or developing country like India. Public policies are generally formulated by taking into consideration the views and values of the elite sections of the society. This is because of elites think that the common man is not so mature or wise enough to know the good for itself for the society. So understanding and that making a policies for the elite status and to making the peoples and all of that is important. As in keeping in view that an author that is a Wilfredo Pareto in the 1848 and 1923. Pareto says that the people are always governed by the elites except short period of time. He rejects the linear, progress evolutionary interpretations of history and social change. According to Pareto, history of a man is a history of continuous replacement of certain elites as one ascends, another declines. Such is the real phenomenon. Through though it to us it is may often appear under another form. Pareto thesis says the elite always rule. History just is the story of elite and replacing by another. He called the circulation of elites. When the current elite start to decline, if makes a way for another, Pareto thought this came about two ways, either through assimilation or the new elite merging with elements of old or through revolution. Most of the time, the river flows continuously, smoothly, incorporating its tributaries, but sometimes after the storm, it floods and breaks its banks. Pareto classifies social classes by taking elites as a stick at. Elites present higher stratum. The others, namely non-elites, are thought to the lower stratum. There are various strata in the higher stratum. All of them constitute elite stratum. The main strata indirectly have a considerable role in the government. Non-governing elite consists of a rest in the elite stratum. Political elites that effectively and particularly exercise political power. The elite and upper stratum or aristocracy contains a certain number of people, but it cannot be sharply defined because social classes like societies are homogeneous. They are not entirely distinct to each other, even in the caste system and the particularly society where circulation is extremely rapid. Pareto identified two types of elite rulers. The first one whom call it the foxes and those who dominate mainly through combination, deceit, cunning, manipulation, and co-option. The rule is characterized by decentralization plurality, skepticism, and they are uneasy with the use of force. Lions, on the other hand, are more conservative. They emphasize unity, homogeneity, established ways and established faith, and through rule small, centralized, and hierarchical and bureaucracies. And they are far more at ease with the use of force than the devious foxes. History is a slow swing of pendulum from one type of elites to other, from foxes to lions and back again. And the Gaetano Mosca, 1858-1951, 41. Mosca argued that any type of society at one point of history, there are two classes of people,